a hush in the hall where the medals used to glimmer short line. Trumpet curls like a question in a glass of cheap red wine. Slow and dim, short line. The bass walks off like a sneaking out past.
Welcome to Barney's Tavern. This show, I'm super excited to have a guest on that I've admired, watched, learned from, and been inspired by for almost a decade and a half, 2 decades in Edmonton. Today we're going to talk about some stuff that I think everyone has a real remarkable interest in, and that's the future and the AI and innovation and disruption. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce author, speaker, and innovation specialist, Shawn Kanungo.
Hey, thank you so much. Well, listen, I really appreciate you having me on. It's been a pleasure, knowing you over the years and, seeing the incredible businesses that you've created. And to be honest with you, I have been waiting to come on Barney's Tavern my entire life. And here we are. This is it. This is a bucket list, and I made it. I'm gonna retire.
Well, I mean, it's going to be you, me, and a handful of others. But I'm glad you enjoy it, and I'm sure it's going to be a great conversation.
I'm just kidding. What was the catalyst in calling it Barney's Tavern? What's the catalyst?
The space is really a reflection of my memory of my grandfather. So my grandfather served in the Second World War. He was most certainly probably the most impactful person in my life, my young life, especially as a kind of mentor and a father figure. I take it very serious, his memory and the memory that those who served. So I needed a man cave, I needed a theme, and as a place to have these kinds of conversations, it tends to be that place, literally. So lots of folks will join me here, and we'll get into deep, interesting conversations, usually around brown-colored alcohol of certain types. So
yes,
but so that's Barney's Tavern.
Love it.
Let's get into the conversation, and I thought I'm going to just go boom and hit you with the same thing that I've been thinking about for the last few years, not last few years, like maybe last few months specifically, the last year and a half. It felt like something to worry about. Now in the last few months, weeks, life is going to get tricky in terms of, as an entrepreneur, as someone who has a business and has a business that's largely driven in the knowledge economy. Software and learning, those are the business I'm in is a combination of those two things. And in a way, you could say, those are things that can be created free today in this market. I thought maybe I'm going to hit you with this. You're extraordinary as a speaker, as a thought leader, and as an entrepreneur, and I've loved watching it. But I don't know what you charge, and all I know is you are in the biggest rooms. You are one of the most popular speakers on this topic around the world, and I'm sure you charge a lot. And you walk in and you talk about disruption, which now, GPT or pick your favorite tool can essentially access that same content for nothing. So, Shawn, what are you actually selling?
Yeah, well, to be honest with you, I actually think I'm underpriced. With whatever somebody is paying for me, I think I'm underpriced. What I'm selling is at the end of the transformation, and I think one of the greatest, reasons why I'm actually in this business is because it's the transformation that people get, after coming to a talk of mine, whether it's 3, 6 months, a year later, them changing the trajectory of their career and, most importantly, their business. I have this beautiful advantage of coming back to an organization the year or 2 years after, and to see the impact that, they've made. And the reason why they bring me back is because they've added another zero or a couple of zeros to their net revenue, or they save costs. And to me, that's value, that's impact at the end of the day. So, and I think part of the reason why I am relevant is because it's more than just words on a paper. I fundamentally believe that strategy is energy. Strategy is not just what you put on a paper. Ask Claude, ask Gemini, ask ChatGPT for a great strategy. It will give you an incredible strategy, but that can't result in execution at the end of the day. What you need is energy. What you need is that light switch to go on, and that's what I provide. And I'm not there to hold their hand, but at least the light switch to say, hey, we need to move forward. And so to me, that's why I think I'm underpriced.
Well, hey, what I've enjoyed is for whatever reason, it seemed I'd see you more in airplanes than almost anywhere else. But
Well,
I've been in the
listen,
room to hear you speak.
yeah,
But I mean, when I first met you, I think was been around the time you would have been at Deloitte, because it was certainly a few years before COVID.
yeah.
And so you were kind of double tasking for a while, right? Like you were finding yourself as a speaker, and would you be considered? I mean, certainly I'm motivated when I talk, when I listen, like a motivational speaker. And at the time, you were kind of dabbling in that as part of your identity as a consultant at Deloitte, or was it specifically something that you wanted to pursue as a
Yeah.
career, I guess?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. By the way, yes, I do see you a lot in airports, and I know immediately when I'm not going to get the upgrade on Air Canada when I see LABC on that upgrade list, and I said there is a million miler in front of me, and I'm not going to get ahead of him.
I hope that's true,
Yeah,
because that's the only joy I might get out of traveling so much.
when I was at Deloitte, I was leading a lot of our digital and innovation efforts, and then clients wanted to hear about the work that we were doing, and they were like, "Hey, we got a conference, we got a workshop," and I would be more than happy to present on the work that we were doing, and because of that, I was able to build trust and affinity with the people that I was working with, because I was able to not only do the work, but I'll speak about the work that we were doing. And I just found that as an incredible vehicle for of building awareness of what we were doing, building awareness of what I was doing. And also, I never saw something more sticky than being able to get on a stage and, persuade folks with these ideas, and then be able to shoot it on a camera and just amplify that even more. Like I still haven't found a better way of convincing and persuading folks to take a particular path. And so it was, super helpful when I was at Deloitte. And then when, I remember looking at my schedule back in 2017 and 2018, and I said, you know what, I don't know if I'm going to be able to, work. I was going to be a partner at Deloitte soon. And I said, I don't know if I'm going to be able to do both. And so, that's why I broke off and did my own thing, and never looked back, and super grateful for my my time at Deloitte and being in the weeds of enterprises and change and innovation. But yeah, it's been an incredible ride since then.
I have a theory, and
Please.
I love your opinion on it, because it seems like you've done something similar to I have. When I have people approach me and they're in the context of, hey, I want to be an entrepreneur, or I don't know, like a young person specifically, what should I do? And I would like to, and I have always said, go work for the biggest firm in the industry you want to be in
Yeah.
for a period of time. And because what you see inside an organization like that is equal parts, what you don't do or shouldn't do, as you think about developing your own business and how you'd run it, but also everything that the best in the world learn to do. And those are things that are super important for your business to be successful. So I often give that advice to future or wannabe entrepreneurs. Do you feel that impacted your perspective working inside? Because
Oh,
I
I
can
mean,
imagine Deloitte is a well-known animal in terms of what it does.
well, it's not just Deloitte. It's going into all these different organizations, across every single industry, and understanding how leadership runs, understanding how systems run, understanding processes. I didn't know what I didn't know what a procure to pay process was. I didn't know what I wouldn't know what like Workday, Oracle, SAP, ServiceNow, and what they did, and what a go live was in terms of an ERP implementation. Like, what is actually the underbelly of an organization? How does a finance transformation work? I wouldn't understand any of that unless you go to different industries and understand how big businesses work. And so once you walk the halls of thousands of organizations and work on their strategy and help them those things, like I pray to God, Chris, that my kids can work at a big firm and have that type of experience and get punched in the face every single day and just understand how the world works, and that's what I was able to experience. I think working at a firm is the like I would rather take somebody that worked at a firm for 10 years than somebody that has been in a particular industry for just 60 years doing the same thing in and out, because the level of learning that you get that's compounded during a very short period of time is incredible. Now, the only better job than that in terms of compounding learning is being an entrepreneur, which is something that you've been incredible at over the decades. And you can tell me
But
about
I don't
compounding
think I
nature.
would have had any of the levels of successes that we've had without the perspective first of industry
Yeah.
at a pretty serious level where you understand it and all the contextualization and literacy you get about those kinds of topics you bring with you as an entrepreneur. I think that I don't know, it certainly doesn't guarantee success, but I think it helps insulate you from it. So that's probably I guess why I shared that. I specifically wonder what I'm looking forward to getting into the conversations about, disruption, which you're a specialist in for sure. But let's talk about the big four. They refer to them as the big four, but let's talk about the big consultancies and firms of their type around the world who drive, massive amounts of shareholder value out of, a lot of things that seem like would be completely on the horizon to be disrupted by artificial intelligence, agentic AI, all those things.
Yeah.
Just not, without diving into that topic too deep, I'd love your perspective on how you think those big firms, if they're well prepared or not well prepared for what's coming.
I think it's probably one of my favorite topics to dive into in terms of the disruption when it comes to professional services, specifically when it comes to consulting. I think, there are many parts of that business that are resilient, and I'll get to that. And there are many parts of the business that are not. The old model of consulting is that you hire a really smart person with a really nice suit, and they walk in with a really nice briefcase, and they're put in the corner, and somebody said, "Hey, who's working on the strategy?" And you point to that guy with a really nice suit and a really nice briefcase, and that would be the value proposition, that you'd have somebody there that was apparently smart, that had all the industry experience, and really now that's become completely democratized, because the smartest entity in the room is Claude, Gemini, ChatGPT, Grok, and more agents to come. We all know that. You don't need the smartest person in the room because it's already in the room. It's already on your phone. And it can bubble up the best strategies. It can bubble up the best practices. So you don't need that person to do that. And so many of the businesses, many of the verticals that many of the big consulting firms were owned, which is actually the space that I was in, which was a strategy, is being completely commoditized. But the role of a consultant was always to hold someone's hand, to persuade, to convince, to take action, to be a coach, and that will always be resilient. And I think when you're doing a large transformation, when you're doing a large, for example, an ERP implementation, that's something that you can't just plug into AI, get an AI to do. That requires people and knowledge and process to move an organization forward. And I would argue, in a world where there's so much radical change, you might actually need someone to hold your hand and do that, even though AI has all the answers. And I don't know if you've experienced this, Chris, but I actually believe that there's two universes that exist right now. There's one universe that, has been completely AI pilled. They understand what's happening in this space. They're building their own AI agents and their workflows. And there's another group, which is actually the majority of the group, which is just like they've discovered ChatGPT yesterday and they've made a nice recipe. And those are the two worlds that exist. And the people that need the most help are the people that just discovered the recipe. And so I'm not sure what you're seeing on the ground floor.
I think you're, well, first of all, that would be exactly my experience. So, and I have been deep, staying up till 2, 3, 4 in the morning deep. I haven't felt that way, like that energy as an entrepreneur since, I think we started our business, our, yardstick, the software business, like in the mid 2000s.
Love that.
And it's because it's an extremely liberating tool when OpenClaw came out, and the ability to kind of put hands on this thing. To me, I almost had fatigue from using ChatGPT in the way that most people would, which is just trying to dig out of it a better way to present something or to plan something. And that wasn't, I mean, that's not inconsequential, but when it could build me a website and an app and send email or manage things on my behalf or programmatically, because I hadn't been playing with AI like our development teams have been, where they've been using Claude and, in a number of different ways, leaning on the APIs and the automation, the stuff that makes it powerful. OpenClaw was like the first version of PowerPoint for an entrepreneur. Like, it was just like, holy cow, now I can put my idea together. And because I can clearly visualize my idea, I know exactly what I think needs to be done in terms of how this thing could, be a business, grow, create value and leverage. But now all of a sudden I could actually show it, and whether I could cite reference and I could cite, research. It's a phenomenal tool. So I think in those classifications, the more people who go and experiment, the better. But it's also going to be democratizing for that entrepreneur with an idea, or an entrepreneur who has a vision of how he's doing my business better too. So it's going to create a huge competitor class to virtually every type of knowledge economy business. And then kind of totally grasping onto the value creation for your customer. Like, how does the customer still want to buy from you? And it's nothing to do with building software or content necessarily. So anyways, it was good.
I wanted to throw back to you around that, the professional services piece, because I'd love to get your thoughts on that, and if you think my assessment is accurate, because I think that this is such a exciting and scary time for anybody in professional services.
Well, the way you describe it, but in my experience in using consultative approaches, we're going through a reshaping of our business today to realign our entire business along a different spectrum, which is a persona-based approach. Because, we have a B2C business, we have a B2B business, and kind of a B2 government business. Those are the three key personas in my business. As I thought about how do I automate, how do I improve, how do I tap into my own data and kind of create a feedback loop and create more and more and more value for the users who use our application. And it just became obvious because an AI agent told me, this is a persona-based organization, and you should use a revenue operations model. And so immediately I'm retooling my whole organization, literally as we speak, to do that, and thinking, gosh, change management of that is always the hardest part. And so whenever we get a consultant would provide, and hopefully insightful advice on what to do on a big project or a business, the hardest part is always, and where it fails almost in my experience, is in the implementation phase. And I thought, so I was thinking about last night in terms of your the power you hold now is that you have to inspire millions of people who need to understand the opportunity of AI versus the threat of it. And the opportunity of AI, the one thing that I would say, if there's a scale, and is it good or bad, and I'm more leaning heavily that this is going to create so much economic and ingenuity value creation for the world that we can't even predict. And it can level a lot of people into a position where they're scared to death, because many, many, many jobs will be replaced by automated functions. And so I'd love to switch gears a little bit to your book, and the concept of this be bold and the disruptors, and particularly the idea that you share this sense that disruptors are bold. They share a DNA strand, and that's kind of a consistent thing that you have or you don't have. That's a debate that often happens, I think, amongst entrepreneurs. Are you born with it, or can you develop it? And I think it's obviously a little bit of both, in my opinion. But when I thought about that, and I thought about disruptors, I thought about myself. I'll share a personal story, just in the sense that, so I had a very challenging childhood. There's a disruptions in my family as a child. So I had, my mom was a single mom raising us, and you know, we lived often on social assistance, and sometimes a couple times in a foster home. I went to 16 schools in 12 years. That's the marker that I share, because I think that people see that and they go, okay, you know, because most people can't imagine that. Most people went to 2 or 3 schools in their, you know, in their childhood, and I think that's what created me, in the sense that it created these skills in me to be very, very, very adaptive, be a risk taker, all those kinds of things. And I thought about the idea, and most of what you present in material about your ideas is quite aspirational, and it's to help motivate people and for them to find greater success. But I think about those disruptors that need to become that way because of their circumstance, and people who have a harder time escaping that circumstance. And, you know, I'm just curious, like, is it something that we choose, or is it something that's in us? And I've always wondered about the entrepreneurial ability of those who've had a harder time earlier. And does that have an impact, you know, possibly on that?
You know, you see that a lot, right? Amongst, you know, incredible disruptors like yourself, where, you know, there is some sort of strife. You look at some of the, you know, the greatest entrepreneurs of all time, from, you know, Steve Jobs, you know, being adopted and, you know, going through his struggles, to Elon Musk, to, you know, it's normally the case that's, you know, some of the greatest entrepreneurs have some sort of, you know, commonalities, that their childhood wasn't easy. I mean, there are some examples that are not, like, you know, you got Mark Zuckerberg and Bill Gates, for all intents and purposes, they came from really great families and really great backgrounds. So, I mean, it obviously swings the other way. But my belief is that you can actually instill this idea of being a disruptor. You can instill it by, I think, having 2 ingredients. Number one, it's this, like, willingness to embrace risk, willingness to embrace failure. And I think the best way of doing that is by, you know, this idea of exploration, experimentation, and just continuing and building a muscle around that. And number 2 is really, if you want to instill it within your organization, I think you need a deep commitment to people and to build that psychological safety within an organization. And that's how I think you can actually build a disruptor. You know, there's an interesting study that came out a couple of years ago around who are the most prolific and the most innovative individuals on the planet. This research team, they went throughout history and looked at artists and creatives and scientific innovators, and what made them so prolific, what made them so innovative. And the thing that they discovered was the reason why some people are so prolific and so innovative is they went through this period of exploration, of experimentation. It could have been years, decades in the making, and then at some point they exploited. So they went through this massive time of just trying new ways of doing things, and then ultimately put it all together. You know, a great example is somebody like Vincent van Gogh. For years, for decades, he experimented with you know, different ways of putting together his art, different color experimentations, and only at the end of his career that he produces his greatest his work. So that is the commonality that you see across most folks, is that they go through this period of exploration. And maybe in your world, it's like you're going to 16 schools in 12 years, like you're seeing so many things, and you're learning about so many people, and you're learning about different environments, and that's certainly a period of exploration. But that's what you see time and time again. Huge part of exploration, and then at some point you put it all together and you exploit.
Yeah, I mean, there's certainly a necessity sometimes of having to, you know, fend for yourself, to be forced into situations you maybe that do actually imprint on you quite a bit. So, and I've always just been fascinated by this kind of nature versus nurture thing. But in the world today,
I agree. And here's my problem. Here's my problem, because I know you got kids, grandkids. I got 3 kids, and I want them to also essentially have an entrepreneurial mindset. I want them to build this level of grit and resilience and hunger at the end of the day. And I'm trying to learn from, parents that are, a lot, older than I am to say, how do we continue to do this? Because my kids are probably living a pretty comfortable life, to be honest with you. They haven't really had that much. I mean, I got to give them more pain and suffering, but this is something that I'm trying to struggle with, where how do I give them enough love while also introducing them to enough pain so that they're like, how do I know how to fend for myself? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, that's a whole parenting podcast that I don't think I'd be fully qualified to do. I am very lucky. I've got 2 adult daughters and 4 grandchildren. But, I don't think I was necessarily perfect in trying to create that scenario. It does lend to the idea, though, that, and I watched one of your videos. I was actually preparing for one of my board meetings. It's kind of first time we have a board, per se, for our company. And I really wanted to take some inspiration around the ideas that we were exploring in our business, and agentic and automation, and really expanding, hopefully, our impact in terms of marketing and those kinds of things. But then how the product can shift easier and faster. So, it's a really interesting time for us. And I was staying up till 3 in the morning and trying to figure out how to, when OpenCloud dropped, it was like a Thursday. By Saturday, I had a machine imaged because I'm like, okay, what is this thing? And, by Monday, I had a full-on virtual chief of staff with their own website and which I'm not sure. But it really came down to a couple things, and I really enjoyed the video that I watched in preparation of that, because those 2 words came up that I felt were essential. It's almost entirely what's required, and that's the idea of agency and curiosity. And curiosity, I understand, and I think that's been, if any, it's one of our corporate values. When you go to our website, I mean, it's our first values. I mean, we are curious, and because to me that's the pull that I got from being constantly curious as an entrepreneur. And always finding out that the answer you're looking for is really right on the other side, and it was always getting more. I was learning more and more, and so pulling on the curious thread was something I was quite passionate about. But the word agency is a little different, and meaning I understand it, and I understood it, and I certainly see it in myself. Like if I'm a very high agency person, and probably too much so in a way, in terms of kind of needing to be a leader of all the people in our organization, but having relationships, because agency overdone can be too much. But the word, and then the words together, and then I thought that's essential to survival today. Yeah, it feels like it is, and I mean that not just in your career, but I'd love your perspective on that and how you share that.
Yeah, to me, my belief is that high agency is the #1 skill set of the 21st century. What is agency? To me, agency is about taking action, executing, getting stuff done. A high agency person is someone that doesn't ask for permission. They just get stuff done. A high agency person is somebody that is able to be a problem solver. High agency person is someone that can orchestrate, all these agents in front of them. They understand the problem, and they just go off and do it. And to be honest with you, I don't need any more smart people. I have 5 smart people in my pocket. I have Grok and Gemini and Claude and ChatGPT and OpenClaw, and I got it. I got the smart people. Are you this person that can actually make it happen? That is the most important skill set on the planet today, because to me, that's what's going to differentiate people that will essentially win, and those that will just be that will overanalyze at the end of the day. You can overanalyze to death now that you have all the technology, all the resources, and all the knowledge at your fingertips. I need somebody that can take action. And so to me, I just want to instill, I want to create more high agency people. I want to hire more high agency people. And it. I mean, you can just, you can see it when people walk in the door and you give them a task, or they work for a week. You can tell who is high agency, right? And I think the opportunity for organizations is that how do we instill high agency, and how do we get more people to become more high agency? That's more of a trick.
Well, it's probable that theoretically that if you are in a low agency position, meaning you're doing something that's maybe administrative, repetitive, or not unimportant, but still certainly susceptible to changes with automation and AI. It's likely because that's probably the type of work that you like, and we know lots of people like that, and there's super important diversity in every organization. But if those functions go away and you want them to learn how to be more high agency, then how do you do that?
Yeah, well, by the way, I would challenge you and say that, no matter what job that you're in, you can have high agency. You can be the janitor and have high agency, that you are the one that loves your job. You solve problems. You're able to clean quickly. You're able to, answer complaints. You're able to you show up on time and just be responsive. You could be the executive assistant and have high agency. And so no matter what job you have, you can demonstrate the attributes of what high agency is all about. And I think if you want to instill high agency, I think in this new era of work, my belief is that you have to empower people. You have to give people ultimate empowerment. And that comes with, number one, you have to be willing for folks to go off and take shots. You have to incentivize people to take shots. That means when someone makes a mistake, you cannot slap them on the hand and say, hey, don't do that again, unless hopefully they took a shot and they learned something around it, and you want to incentivize for people to take shots. That's number one. And number two, you have to give them that psychological safety to go off and try things. And psychological safety to me is not just about saying, hey, we got your back, but it's really understanding and knowing people. And my belief is that in a more remote work world, in a world where people are wanting to work from home on their laptops, I actually believe that you can't build culture. You can't build that affinity for each other, that you have each other's back. When you see people and you look people in the eyes and you know who their husbands and their wives and their kids and their grandkids are, that's when you're going to go to war for each other. And innovation is hard enough. It's hard enough, and that's why you need to build that trust with one another. And I think those are some of the ingredients of how to create high agency people. Like to be honest with you, I just want to go with people that will go to war with me. And the people that are going to go to war with me are the people that care for you and are willing to take risks. So to me, that's how you build it.
Well, I mean, in many ways, I guess we're kind of doing what you're saying, and hadn't necessarily put a lot of frame on that, but because we have roughly 60 people in our business, let's say, and here we are, like we're like, everybody go play with these tools, go start thinking about how to integrate them into your world, but inevitably there's always there's an anxiety, high or low, but it's in the backdrop of like, I'm going to work myself out of a job. And we've started to kind of like take the position, these people, I can say to a T, luckily, of all the employees, they're all culture fits. They're on the mission for the same reasons we're on our mission in terms of our objectives, our strategy, and our vision, and they share our values for the most part. So you start to wonder, literally every job, including mine, is going to change possibly 5 different ways and from every angle, because every week there's a new thing that changes what can or can't be done, in particularly AI. And so you almost have to start to say, okay, it's the culture we're going to work on forever. The products may change, the strategy may change, even the shape of this might change, because otherwise, there's probably, as always, technical competencies that you need to have in certain organizations. But past that, it really does become around these personal attributes. Are you curious, and do you have agency? And I think you have to create the framework of your organization first before people can feel safe and comfortable to do that. Because otherwise, you're going to have this reticence to AI. Something came up, and I'm going to end on talking about what this means for young people in the future. But I'm curious if you're experiencing something I've heard recently, which is that there's a kind of a generational cutoff where AI is looked at as very, environmentally, irresponsible, kind of like, I don't know, it's a counterculture response to what I remember when the internet, because I see this as bigger than the internet, but certainly as the same in equal. Living when the internet came out, I was a young, manager at 25, 26 years old, kind of when I started to, have it in my home, which is when it came out, as far as I'm concerned. I don't see that with young people in AI today. I see this kind of skepticism and a downward view of it, which would, if what I think is true, would put some of those folks in a really bad spot in a few years.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly see it as well. I think AI is probably one of the most unpopular conversations to have right now, amongst many groups. It is. I mean, we're literally talking about, something that is more unpopular than like Iran or there's polls out there that say, what do you hate the most, and AI certainly tops it. I think part of the reason is because of and by the way, every single technology I believe is 51% great and 49% terrible. And there are some risks, there's some consequences, there's implications to jobs. There's so many pieces that of the AI, they're not great. And I think those are good to call out. I think the reason why AI has such a negative, stigma right now is I don't think that it's threatening jobs. I think it's threatening people's identity. We've been brought up in an organization where you develop a certain level of knowledge and experience, and you develop this healthy ego about the job that you're supposed to do, and now you have this technology that's coming around that's changing everything that we know about work. Think about a young person that is going to be graduating soon, and they've learned their entire lives about a particular craft or a particular job that they've been hoping, and now that you have AI coming around that's impacting everything to do with that job, it's not threatening jobs, it's threatening everyone's identity, and that to me is what is part of the fact that AI is so uncomfortable for folks. And yes, there's the environmental factor, and yes, there's a piece around risk and deep fakes and all that, but I think it comes back to our identity, and that's what makes us human. And I think the more that we can become comfortable with these tools, the more that we can see that this is an incredible amplifier to everything that we do, the more that we're going to be able to embrace it. I always say this, is that AI is not going to take jobs, it's going to allow you to do any job. And it doesn't replace the fact that you become a specialist in your particular field, but it's like, listen, I'm not a coder, I'm not a designer, I'm not an accountant, but at least AI makes me dangerous enough that I can put together, incredible, slideware, even though I'm not a designer. I'm not an incredible coder, but at least I can put up an application that creates value for me at the end of the day. And so
is that what you mean by identity when you say, like, I use the same example for myself. I can do all this stuff I haven't been able to do before, but there are people who are extremely skilled, experienced, and professional at that, and all of a sudden they've kind of lost, the competitive, and so is it that where you think people's identity is being attacked? Is like that AI is going to do something I can do?
I see that a lot, that if you're a 3D modeler and now you've went 5-6 years in school learning how to 3D model, and now somebody can prompt together a 3D model, it's incredibly threatening to your identity, and the fact that you've part of craftsmanship is it's not just the outcome, it's the journey to get there, and to see someone just prompt something together, layman just prompt something together and put it out, that can be incredibly threatening. I think I certainly believe that that's part of it, and that's why I see people rejecting it, a lot of young people rejecting it, because they think that it's taking away something that they've developed over some time, or something that they wanted to do.
The job they've wanted to do their whole life, or something like that. So, well, I mean, it's going to be the biggest probably societal conversation for decades, and I really appreciate thinking about it, particularly because I have a business that can be disrupted by it, and to me, I'm comfortable with that because I'm comfortable in the world where everyone's getting disrupted at the same time and moving just faster, quicker, or in a slightly right direction compared to our competitor, because the things we deliver and do, which is helping learners achieve competence and prove competence. And that's a whole other thing. We've been talking about identity. I mean, I think in a post-truth world, which is kind of what we live in right now, identity and proof of competency are going to become, and it cannot be done now based on cryptography, as you probably know. So, but the societal acceptance of a digital identity, it will become your strategic advantage, and meaning you're not a computer and you can prove it. And there's a certain need for that. There will always be, obviously, of course, in the world. So it's a fascinating debate. Our business is quite involved in not necessarily digital identity, but identity verification and competency verification. We're adopting these new global protocols. The W3C protocol on verifiable credentials, and it's a whole bet. But we're wrapping around our entire customer product software offering, including training, meaning the new thing we're really trying to offer is proof of competency, and not delivering training, because that's a commoditized thing, and of course we're in regulated spaces, so we have a decent moat. But it's fascinating. That's kind of why I feel comfortable having more of this conversation, because I need as much as every other business owner like me to kind of get a sense for how to respond.
You mentioned moat. What do you think that do you think that moats will still exist in an AI world where, basically if anybody can do anything, do you think that there's still, resilient moats left?
I think so. Yeah, I think so. We're an infrastructure play. We always have been. So kind of think of us like a Shopify for organizations that want to deliver training online, but particularly in the regulated spaces. So like multi-tenant storefronts, you can build a site and deliver hunter education in one province, and safety training over here. And so we have a couple hundred websites that essentially do that across the country. The reality is this one common set of rails, and the ability to issue verifiable credentials is common to that, and that's a protocol that's interoperable with any other network. Yeah. So our mode is this network that we can attract people into our software and share and distribute our publisher content with them. They can bring their own content into the network, but everything in the network can be trusted. So when you're at the gate at Suncor and you're presenting your your first aid card and your digitally verifiable first aid credential that you might have received from St. John Ambulance, that one can be verifiably trusted, meaning it's cryptographically provably true, because it's getting a real-time, it's a key that's cryptographically matching with the issuer key wherever that credential is issued. So all of that becomes a network that can be trusted, and that becomes essentially, you can choose to be in one or outside of one. And if you want to build to be in a part of an interoperable world, it's a massive capital investment, it's a massive risk, and we have this elegant software that just does it. So I'm comfortable with that mode. I think it's going to be fascinating to see how it plays. It brings me to this question about the idea of frictionless versus frictionful, I guess, to say the wrong thing. And then if you're in the middle, the words I wrote down, the black hole of mediocrity. So if your company is completely frictionless or deliberately high friction, explain that for us.
Yeah, so my belief is that there's going to be two types of organizations that will win in the future. There'll be organizations that are incredibly frictionless, where you tap a button and you get something delivered to your door. Amazon, Temu, McDonald's, Uber, Shein, it's fast, it's frictionless, you tap a button, it's there. They're going to win. God bless them. Then there's going to be a whole slew of companies that actually slow things down. You go to the Four Seasons, it's an incredible experience. You go to Disneyland, it's an awesome experience with your kids. You go to the Genius Bar at Apple, it's a one-on-one interaction with somebody. You go to Hermes, it's about craftsmanship. There's a experience there's humanity, there's trust. When I talk about friction, it's about doubling down on humanity, and in humanity is about slowing things down. And so those companies, in a way, slow things down. So those are the two extremes that will win in the future. And my belief is that if you're in the middle, if you're providing a service or a product or anything that is not that fast, it's kind of in the middle, or not that human and incredibly experiential, then you're going to lose. And I would actually argue that everybody should look at their existing processes internally and say, hey, either you make something incredibly fast and efficient and seamless, or you actually slow things down. And I actually think internally within an organization, that's the lens that we should be looking at our processes, and be deliberate and taking a look at the customer journey or the employee journey and say, okay, what should we actually make frictionless, or where do we actually slow things down? A great example of this as an internal example is, and somebody asked me about Four Seasons. Well, the Four Seasons, for example, let's talk about the onboarding or check-in process at the Four Seasons. Now, everybody and their mother knows that and you go into a ton of hotels, the most seamless, frictionless way of getting into your hotel room is that you would tap your phone on the door and you would be in. Beautiful. Like that is the least amount of friction to get into a hotel room. But my argument, and I had this argument with many customer experience folks and Four Seasons in the room that agrees with me, is that actually they deliberately should slow things down, because the part of the magic of going into an incredible resort or a Four Seasons is that you talk to someone that's incredible and they tell you about the restaurants and the shops and the food and the concierge and where the gym is and what's in store for their arrival, and they come out of their booth and hand you the keys and direct you and walk you to the elevator. There's magic to that. And in essence, it is slowing things down, but it's making that experience more meaningful and magical. So not everything should be frictionless. And in fact, maybe some things should be slowed down. And so that's the difference. And I actually think that, a business that's incredibly fast will win, and those that are incredibly slow will win too. So that's
what you're saying is, I didn't interpret. So now I think I interpret it differently and better. And in the sense that, and obviously if you're a brand specific type of organization like the Four Seasons versus the, whatever, pick your, common traveler, low friction experience that you want in a lower cost hotel experience. But inside an organization, you're talking about processes that are high friction when they should be, and low friction, obviously, when they should be. And that kind of just talks about, to me, is quality and productivity. And I think about that because I was debating you in my mind, going, well, I have both of these situations in my organization where it would be best to be intentful in both different directions, but different parts of the organization. And to me, what I mean by that is it shouldn't be hard to use my software. It shouldn't be hard to use any of our web pages. It should be easy to understand.
Exactly.
The UI, the UX, and the experience for the learner, the impact that they take away from it, how they can spread that impact if they want to share it. Those kinds of things should be frictionless. But the experience when they reach out to us, we still have a telephone, email, chat, social support. When they're talking to a human, really highly, kind of empowered, autonomous behavior by those humans to provide an extraordinary experience makes the difference, right? Between where you might, you'd want to buy or, partner with, those kinds of things. So I was struggling with it, thinking I've got to be a frictionless organization, or and I took it the wrong way. But I do think about, are you familiar with Salesforce's decision to essentially go to become a headless solution?
I mean, I was just going to bring that up. I think.
And is this what you mean?
No, I mean that's an example of something. That's an example of making something incredibly intuitive from a frictionless perspective. I think Salesforce going headless is what every software company should do, because I've never met a single human on the planet that wants to click through someone's UI on Workday, ServiceNow, QuickBooks, name any software. No one wants to enter information into any CRM, extract the information. The most seamless way, the most intuitive way of using any software is using the front end as the
function
AI
of it.
and saying, hey, pull the data. What's going on with this? Like natural language, and then the agent going off, and whether it's clicking through or using an API to pull that information. I would challenge every software company to say, I actually don't think that there is another way. Like I do this today, and which is like, if I need to find out, if I'm at a hotel and I'm like, what floor is the gym? I'm not going to the Marriott Sheraton Toronto website. I'm gonna go to ChatGPT or Claude. Hey, find me where the gym is on the floor. That is the that's how everyone is going to interact. And I think if software companies don't figure that out, they're going to get beaten by AI native companies that understand that the simplest UI or the user experience is just voice, or it's just enter this information into LLM. But
Well,
I'm happy to challenge on that.
Well, no, I like in terms of chess moves, which I mean, I'm always trying to imagine these outcomes, and it's clear to me there is no choice. Like as a software company owner who has, 3 key platforms that provide functions in, training and credentialing in regulated industries, it'll go a little slower there because a lot of our customers are institutional, regulators, government, those kinds of things. They won't be seeking some of those solutions as quickly, but ultimately it's inevitable because the ability for people to build their own interfaces and then use APIs or data sharing or AI and even algorithms to shape and bring that back to me the way I want to see it is here now. Like I can now create my own corporate information dashboard that shows exactly what I want to see. And there's a high likelihood that if I'm not on a software application that provides or gives me an API to that data, or it's not configurable, I will be switching to one. And ultimately, I can see that's for management information, that makes sense. It's been around a long time, single sign-ons, those kinds of things. But when you start to imagine what's kind of the art of the possible here, if I have an exam software, I'll use that as an example because I don't anymore. We sold that business. But if I had one, I can't assume that every activity around that is going to happen on my tech. It should be likely should be on someone else's tech, and that might be specific in every different case of each customer. So I think it's inevitable. I'm sure you're right. I just think it's going to be disruptive software, and I think it's going to define the new software category as an investable category, which is trying to find itself right now too, right? So
I think my kids will be like, why are you clicking on this? Why are you clicking the button?
Yeah, why do you have to go sign up to this thing?
What is that? Why didn't you just ask the thing to build you the whole financial statement? Why are you clicking on the thing? I really do believe that because it just makes sense, and it's kind of like how it's the most natural way, and once this behavior becomes normalized, and you can see it already as people use ChatGPT and not go to websites, it's going to become normalized. So,
yeah, no, inevitably. I know this is hard to do, but you have more than probably anyone I know direct access to some of the biggest companies in the world. You speak and have spoken to, I'm sure, hundreds of them, and many or most Fortune 500. So you have a seat at the table with some of these organizations. And one thing that I suspect you might have a better sense for, and I'd love you to share, is the kind of what is actually inevitable in the next 5 years where most people aren't taking it serious. I mean, if you had to think of something that because you have more context, more broad experience, or maybe because you're in the right rooms, what's coming and what is coming that most people aren't taking serious?
Well, number one, I think I have no idea, and I want to preface that by saying I have no idea what's going to happen in the next 5 years because I'm not a futurist, and the world is changing very quickly. And the one thing that I will say about the smartest, most capable, the most knowledgeable people on the planet is that they also have no idea what's going to happen in the next 5 years. So everyone is actually at the same place where I think every single leader, even at the biggest and the best companies in the world are being blindsided every day about the speed and the evolution of this technology. And no matter if you're in the Fortune 50 or you're a startup, everyone is, it's just, you cannot keep up with the exponential nature of technology because the genie is out of the bottle. So I think that's going to be true. But the next piece, though, is that I think you're seeing many organizations take this way too slowly. And what I have seen is that the organizations that are all in, 100% in, they've now built a DNA when it comes to AI. They're going to move up 10 to 100 times faster than those that are 80% in on AI, because that last 20% is going to hold everybody back. And what I've seen is that even some multi-billion-dollar companies, when they're all in and they said, hey, we are all using this and we're all leveraging this, they're going to move quicker, faster, and better. They're going to uplift their people. They're going to hire more people because of this technology. And the gap, the only thing I know is that the gap between those that are just dabbling and are taking this slowly to those that are 100% in, that is going to widen every single minute. And at some point, you're not going to be able to catch up because they're just going to compound and just get faster and better because the speed of learning is just faster. That's what I'm excited about. And it's not even agentic AI. I think at some point, you're going to have physical AI. I mean, it's already here, but that's going to also become on an exponential scale. And if you think about agentic AI, that is disrupting everything to do with bits. But what agentic, so agentic AI is disrupting everything to do with bits, but physical AI is disrupting everything to do with atoms. And so there are way more industries that are related to atoms, as you know, manufacturing, mining, construction, you name it, logistics, transportation, but you can't get physical AI with agentic AI. And the companies that actually explore and get benefits out of agentic AI will also be the winners in physical AI, which will create even more opportunities. And so that's the difference. It's you're either 100 in or you're going to be fundamentally left behind.
It's it feels like a religion sometimes. I like me being deeply curious, a reason to really care in terms of my own business and the value I provide my customers. So theoretically, this is part of my job, but truthfully, it's become like a rabbit hole to learn, first how to, use an agentic, an agent for myself, the ability to extend my, my thoughts into a website, the website for this podcast, all that was built by an AI over a weekend, that kind of stuff that I never, ever would have been able to do again. And I noticed that there's just seems to be like two kinds of people in my community of like, if I want to call it, I'm going to just say business owners or middle-aged white guys, whatever you want to call it. I don't know if that's accurate, but it cuts across like my age range for sure, and a diverse group of people that are in, kind of labor roles all the way to senior executive. There's the people that like to turn it off at 5 o'clock and they got the hockey circuit they're on the barbecue circuit at the all that kind of stuff. And I think they may be discounting this as like a subset of the internet, or a new type of software, or web experience. And I think when I saw agentic, it truly sunk in with me, like, man, you can do virtually anything. Like you said, you can know everything and you could do almost any job. And it becomes a character trait or what's in your DNA or how deeply curious you might be. Because, I'd make the argument, and this will be a good place for me to cut over to the end of our conversation. But I had you probably know Michael Walters. He's an Edmontonian, and his son is roughly 18, but he's in that period of time where he's thinking about, okay, what am I going to do? Like it's high school or it's university or whatever. And I just laughed and I said, you know what? Get a YouTube premium account and start building something.
Yeah.
Get a premium account and start building something, and then go from there. God knows where you'll end up. if I had to simplify advice I might give to someone in that age range right now, I probably would still the same thing. And I think it applies if you're just moving into retirement and you're trying to figure out, well, what am I going to do with all this time? It is such an adventurous and explorative place to live if you are genuinely curious, because holy moly, what can you can do? What do you? I would like you to advise that 18-year-old today, because it's been a common thread for whatever reasons through some of my episodes, and I think it's an important one. That person who's at that cusp of that major life decision. So maybe it's the retirement, but most likely it's, that high school age, university aged person in a place like Canada, especially, like where most opportunities are available to you, thankfully. But they may not all be good opportunities today. Would you want to get a CA today? Should you still, if you care about finance? So I'd love to end on that. I'd love you give advice to that 18-year-old. And I know you've got kids. And
and I will say, my kid, I obviously I think about this a lot because, my kids are younger. They're 9, 7, and 3. So, right now, they are learning how to get lost and learning how to make a friend and build grit and resilience. And I think those human aspects are going to become incredibly more important, obviously, in this AI world. So to me, I'm really not worried for them to build any AI skills. But if you're 18 years old, my belief is that your MBA should be essentially learning, exploring, experimenting, and building and shipping in this particular space. The more that you can understand what the future is going to look like, which is going to be, the future is going to be increasingly more agentic, and you become comfortable with using a whole bunch of different tools, I believe that not only are you going to become more valuable than any other person in the organization, that you join, but you're actually going to be one of the most valuable people in any organization. And to be honest with you, I would rather have somebody that is 18 years old, that is building, that's learning, that's hungry, than somebody that has been 40, 50 years in a particular industry and checked out. Because the rate of learning is the most important variable today. And so if you're 18 years old, I would say, Dad, Mom, listen, I need a credit card to figure out how to use Gemini and OpenClaw and Claude and leverage all these tools in your particular vertical and just run. And I think it's still valuable to be a lawyer. I think it's still valuable to be a CPA, but being a CPA that understands all the tools that a CPA needs to know, the AI tools that they need to know as a CPA, you're going to become the most dangerous CPA on the planet. And so I think, I think there's going to be tons of value in those traditional jobs still, like just being a deep specialist, but you have to understand how to use these tools. And that's what I would say. And to me, I think it's such an exciting time to be a new graduate. I think if you're a new graduate that's curious and hungry, I think you're going to be unstoppable.
That's a great way to end it, but you cued me to ask you one final thing that
Please.
I think anyone who's actually, if someone stayed with us to this point, if there's going to be half a dozen of you, and I'd like to say thank you personally.
By the way, if you stayed up until this point, rate, review, subscribe, whatever you got to do for this pod, because
thank you for saying that, because I always forget to do that. I'm not doing this for a living, thank God. So, but I do want to have more conversations like this one. This one's really been exciting and always kind of inspiring for me. But when we talk about tools, then give us a rundown. What are the tools you prefer to use, and why? Or what tools do you think people should start with if they're thinking about starting? Because it is a mess. You Google something in the Apple Store, that even sounds dumb. Those are not the same things. But when you're searching for tools, there is so much noise out there, and a lot of it isn't great. What's the starter kit for tools, and what do you prefer?
Yeah, the starter kit is just do it scared. Just get into it. It really doesn't matter which tool you start with. It just matters that you start picking it up and seeing what works for you. The point of going to the gym is that it doesn't matter what machine you start with or what machine you use on this. It just matters that you go every single day and you start trying and seeing what works for you. And the point of going to the gym is the first and the second and the 500th time that you're there, that all these tools end up becoming lighter in your hand. So I always suggest to pick up as many tools as possible and play. So whether it's, to me, the models will change every day. And it really doesn't matter which model you're using, because at some point, something's going to surpass it at some point. Right now, I would say, ChatGPT 5.5 is really good. Claude Opus 4.7 is really good. OpenClaw is amazing. Perplexity Computer is great. All these tools are amazing. I would say the easiest tools to use right now, and the easiest and best tools, are Claude Opus 4.7 and ChatGPT 5.5. I think Perplexity Computer is probably the easiest agentic tool to use right now. I think OpenClaw is still, at this point, the best overall personal AI assistant that you can still have. It takes some time to set up, but once you do it, it's a spiritual experience having a AI assistant at your fingertips. And I would say, don't even start with the tool. Go find out what your problems are, what your issues are, then go to any of these different leading large language models and say, hey, these are my challenges. What tools should I be using? And whether you're creative, you'll go down a path. Oh, I need to use Midjourney and Canva. And by the way, Claude has synced up with Adobe. Or if you're a lawyer, you're like, I'm going to try Legora and Harvey. And there's these open source platforms. So every single niche has their own AI tools, and it can be overwhelming. Great. Start with one and then go to the next one, because you'll see what works for you. So the point is to get immersed, not to just pick one tool and be done. It's like, how do I build a muscle so I just get stronger every day when I go to the gym? That to me is the best way to look at it.
Wow. Again, I think you're absolutely right. And I wrote down Perplexity because I am, the agent OpenClaw model is really, really, really intriguing to me, but it's been flawed. Yeah. And the one thing that it does do, it helps you fix itself. So luckily, as I'm a non-technical person and I'm opening up a terminal when I don't know how to use terminal. I don't know what that means. And, but it just tells you what to do. It's truly amazing. This has been fun, and I continue and will enjoy watching your success. I mean, you're kind of killing it out there and hitting just higher and higher and higher levels. So congratulations for that. And, I look forward to the next book and yes, always your next video online. So thanks so much.
I really appreciate it. Thank you so much. It's such an honor to be on this pod. I think there are very few people that have the level of curiosity and hunger. Like it's like you're just graduating again, in the fact that you're open clawing and you're using all these tools. Like, it really, truly is an inspiration. And so I think if people can get a morsel of the level of curiosity that you have for this particular space, I think, they're going to be on their way. So really appreciate you having me on. It's been a pleasure.
There's a hush in the hall where the metals used to glimmer short line. Trumpet curls like a question in a glass of cheap red wine. Slow and dim, short line. The bass walks soft like it's sneaking out past curfew. Toe to toe slimmer.